What is good, Raider Nation? It's your boy Raider Alex back with yet another video for you guys. Anybody that's new to the channel, you guys love Raider related content just like this, make sure to like, comment, subscribe to the channel. That being said, let's jump right into the topic of this video. Can the Las Vegas Raiders shock the NFL? The NFL regular season is finally upon us, and the Las Vegas Raiders are seen by most in traditional NFL media as a huge underdog going into the 2024 regular season. Major NFL media companies like ESPN, Bleacher Report, Fox Sports, NBC Sports, and the NFL have all released their power rankings, where in each of those, the Las Vegas Raiders are in the bottom 5 of their NFL power rankings, indicating that the Raiders will more than likely have a very bad season and more than likely be drafted in the top 5 of next year's draft. Now, as a Raiders fan, I wanted to look at this objectively, essentially a regular season preview. Let's examine the reasons why one may be skeptical of this football team's success moving forward. Now, the first and foremost obvious talking point that everybody brings up is the Raiders' current quarterback situation. Many, including myself, saw the quarterback position as a huge need going into the offseason. The Raiders failed to address that need in the draft, and instead they ended up signing a veteran quarterback in Gardner Minshew. And this has led the Raiders' current quarterback room being second-year quarterback Aiden O'Connell alongside of Gardner Minshew. The two had a quarterback battle in training camp, and the quarterback competition between the two was underwhelming to say the least. But the Raiders ultimately ended up going with Gardner Minshew to be named the starter in week 1. Now, the thing with Gardner Minshew is he's a huge wild card. If you watch his film and just his overall career in the NFL thus far, he definitely has had some moments of brilliance, of good football, but he also has quite a few moments of just head-scratching plays and mistakes. He's a quarterback who can use his legs to avoid pressure, which I like that aspect about his game. He can throw on the move. He gives us a lot more mobility at the quarterback position compared to Aiden O'Connell. But overall, when you look at Gardner Minshew from a talent level perspective, he is a very limited player. He doesn't have the biggest arm. He's not the fastest guy out there, but he does play with a lot of confidence and a lot of swagger that sometimes makes him play better than what his actual talent level is. And that's a huge thing that you need at the quarterback position. You need a guy that can instill confidence within your team. So from an intangibles aspect, Gardner Minshew gives you confidence, but at the same time, his overall consistency and his decision making is not the best. He can be very erratic at times when it comes to his decision making with his overall reads, with his accuracy throwing the football, and sometimes he tends to bail the pocket way too early when the pressure starts to build from the opposing defensive line. Now, the good thing for him though is he will have a multitude of different weapons to throw to this season with the Raiders' deep wide receiver group and tight end group. And Gardner Minshew, throughout his career, he's put up some pretty respectable numbers overall. So far in his career, he's played in 49 games, has thrown for nearly 10,000 passing yards, has 59 touchdown passes, and has 24 interceptions. So he has shown that he can be a solid quarterback, but my biggest concern with him and with this offense in general will be predicated off of the play calling and the run game, which are also two components that you can argue are still unproven with the Raiders offense. The Raiders in the offseason targeted former Arizona Cardinals head coach Cliff Kingsbury as their primary option as their offensive coordinator, and everything appeared to be official until he backed out at the last minute, leaving the Raiders stuck finding a different alternative at the offensive coordinator position, which eventually led to us hiring former Chicago Bears offensive coordinator Luke Getsy. And to me, Luke Getsy is still a big question mark going into the season. He had a very bad stint with the Chicago Bears at the offensive coordinator position. And while I understand he did not have a good quarterback in Justin Fields, who's a quarterback that has struggled to reach his potential in the NFL thus far, I definitely get that. But still, Luke Getsy does not have a proven track record of success as an offensive coordinator in the NFL, so that does worry me. Now, the Raiders also have an unproven running back one in Zamir White, but I do have a good feeling about him potentially breaking out. I think Zamir White's a solid running back. He's not going to be a superstar or anything like that, but he should be competent in the running back spot as long as our offensive line can open up the holes for him. And one thing that Luke Getsy was able to do effectively with his time with the Bears was run the ball effectively. So I can understand people being worried about Zamir White not being proven, but ultimately I think we're going to be fine. And really, the running back position isn't an incredibly difficult position to replace. I think we're going to be fine at that spot. But ultimately, that's just me going off of the track record of Luke Getsy and assuming this offensive line will be able to open up the holes for Zamir White. And really, that's going to be a huge factor for success for this Raiders offense in 2024. Can they run the ball effectively? If they cannot, then I think the Raiders offense will have a lot of issues just like we had last season. But those are my biggest concerns for this offense moving forward into 24. How well can we run the football and the overall consistency and creativity that we can see from our offensive coordinator. Now, moving on to the defensive side of the football, this is where we can be a lot more optimistic when analyzing this Raiders roster. We have a lot of overall talent and continuity with the scheme under Patrick Graham, who is going into his third season as the Raiders defensive coordinator. And the Raiders defense came off of a red hot finish last season where they were number 1 ranked in points per game under Antonio Pierce. And essentially this defense has brought back that core unit with a huge free agent signing and defensive tackle Christian Wilkins. And to me, the biggest question mark for this defense and how good they will be and just their overall potential will be based on how well this defensive line can produce this next season. When you look at what happened last year, what really changed everything for the Raiders defense last season was the emergence of defensive end Malcolm Koonce on the opposite side of Maxx Crosby. And Malcolm Koonce will need to continue to wreak havoc off the edge, and also Christian Wilkins will need to be a force in the interior alongside a Maxx Crosby. If all three of these things happen, that could be a recipe for massive success for this Raiders defense. And it's a reason why a lot of people are predicting that Maxx Crosby may win the Defensive Player of the Year award this season. So there's no doubt there's a lot of huge upside for this defense, but all this defensive firepower can be negated if the Raiders cannot stop the run effectively up front. In the preseason, they did have some issues stopping the run, so that needs to be cleaned up because not being stout against the run will affect everything in a negative manner for the Raiders defense. If they can be solid on the ground and force teams into 3rd and long situations, I think this defense will thrive. Overall, I like the linebacker core on this defense. We have a lot of depth, as we chose to carry 7 linebackers on the final 53-man roster. I absolutely love our safety group. And I like, but I don't love the cornerbacks we currently have. My biggest issue with that cornerback room is the depth we have, because if one of our starters were to go out, then that may be a problem for us. I do like Jack Jones and Jacorian Bennett on the outside cornerback spots, but if one of those guys goes down, who will step up? Will a young cornerback like DeCambion Richardson be ready to take on that role? It's still a big question mark to me. But ultimately, if the Raiders defensive line can reach its potential, this will trickle down to all levels of the defense, especially the secondary group, and this could lead the Raiders defense to generating more turnovers. And typically, if you can win that turnover battle consistently in the National Football League, that translates into wins throughout the course of a regular season. So overall, I feel good about this defense, but I think if the Raiders seriously want to make some noise down the stretch and make the playoffs, they will need this defense to be a top 5 caliber unit. Now, that's really the identity I see for this football team. I think we're going to be a football team that's going to have to lean on the defense. The defense is going to have to create some turnovers, and this offense will need to find a way to run the ball effectively, capitalize off the turnovers, and get some big chunk plays here and there. But now that we've established both the good and the bad of the Raiders' current roster, let's talk about the head man, and that is head coach Antonio Pierce. I'm sure a lot of the reasoning why we're so low on these rankings is due to the fact that a lot of people are very skeptical about Antonio Pierce having success as a first-time head coach. And although I think that criticism and skepticism is fair, I do feel really good about Antonio Pierce leading the way for the Raiders moving forward. And really, Antonio Pierce has already shown that he's a born leader and that he can unite and galvanize the locker room, which I definitely think is a big part of having success in the National Football League. But where I really want to see Antonio Pierce take a big leap forward in 2024 is in his overall in-game strategy and his overall game management on that sideline. Last season, and even in one instance in the preseason this year, we saw some issues with clock management, selection of timeouts, and things of that nature. So that's going to be very important for him when it comes to winning football games. The NFL is a game of inches, and if the opposing coach has the advantage in in-game adjustments and overall management of the game, that could be the difference between a win and a loss. So that's really where I want to see a big improvement from Antonio Pierce. But I do like the fact that Antonio Pierce has surrounded his coaching staff with a wealth of NFL knowledge and experience with guys like former head coach Marvin Lewis, Joe Philbin, and the late and great Tom Coughlin, two-time Super Bowl champion. So this does show that Antonio Pierce is a humble coach and he's willing to listen to others around him. But there's no doubt this season is going to be a huge opportunity for Antonio Pierce to evolve as a head coach and essentially prove all his doubters wrong, which are a lot of them. So I think the Las Vegas Raiders in general will need to take all these different reports that we've seen all offseason long as classic bulletin board material and rally together as a unit to prove the entire National Football League wrong. Antonio Pierce has a chip on his shoulder, and these players have a chip on their shoulder as well. And we need to see that attitude and mentality on that football field. Now, overall, my analysis on this football team is I think the Raiders are going to be a team that are in the mix throughout the whole season, but there are some glaring concerns, primarily on the offensive side of the football, that have me worried, and I think that could hold us back. Now, a lot of people have us projected as a 4-13, 5-12 type of football team, but I personally don't see that. This team still has a lot of talent. Me personally, I see the Raiders being somewhere between an 8-9 football team and a 9-8 type of season for us. I think the ceiling for this team would be somewhere around 10-7, which a 10-7 record very likely would cement yourself a spot within the playoffs. And the floor I see for this team is somewhere around 6-11, 7-10. And that obviously would not get you into the playoffs unless something crazy happened. But being in the AFC West and just the AFC conference in general being very strong, that won't get you into the playoffs. But if the Raiders are able to get 9 wins, just depending on how the AFC shapes out this season and how well we do within the division, that could possibly get them into a wild card spot. So that's my overall prediction for this season. I say the Las Vegas Raiders go 9-8 and just barely squeak into the playoffs. But there is so much speculation on how this team is going to look. And the good thing is the wait is almost over. Here in a couple days, we'll finally be able to see the silver and black out there on the football field. And I think that first game is going to be huge for us. I want to see how this team looks, how they come out. And I think week 1 is going to be a huge matchup for the Raiders. I don't necessarily want to say it's a must-win game because it's the first game of the season. But if there ever was a game where you're like, damn, they better win this one, it's going to be right here. The LA Chargers under Jim Harbaugh. Although I think he's a great coach, I think it's going to take some time for them to get things rolling and to adapt to the new system, the new offense, the new defense, the new regime in general. And I think that's the perfect opportunity for the Raiders to come out strong, beat a divisional rival, and put your foot on the right path for the 2024 regular season. After that, the Raiders go on to the road against the Baltimore Ravens, who are seen by most as a clear AFC contender to make the Super Bowl. So that's why I think it's paramount the Raiders get this victory week 1. The Raiders do not want to get into a situation where they could potentially start the season 0-2. I see that being a difficult game on the road against Baltimore. So that's why I think it's going to be huge for the Raiders to come out 1-0 at SoFi Stadium. The Raider Nation is going to be packed out in Los Angeles. And I think the Raiders will get the victory, and that'll be huge for this season moving forward. But Raider Nation, those are my overall takes and analysis for the Raiders going into the regular season this year. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Are you guys confident in this football team? Give me your completely honest opinion. Do you think the Raiders could shock the NFL and potentially make the playoffs this season? Let me know in that comment section down below. But with that being said, Raider Nation, that's all for you guys in today's video. Anybody that's new to the channel and you guys love Raider related content just like this, make sure to like, comment, subscribe to the channel. That being said, I will see you guys in the next one.